I need to share the unhappy news with you that Wireless Advocates is permanently closing, effective immediately.
And that is how Mikey and I found out on Monday, December 5th, that we would be losing our jobs. I just want to stop the video before it got started and apologize for the slight shift in content. I know this is a bit more serious of a video than I've made in the past. However, given the unique situation that both Mikey and I are in, I felt it was very important for Mikey to share his story and for me to be able to provide just a little bit of context as well. I hope you guys appreciate the video, and I will be right back making the regular stuff that I normally do, but I just needed to stop and tell the story the way it was supposed to be told. Thank you.
Mikey. I worked for Wireless Advocates for 3 years. I was a manager for 2 years, and I was a district manager for 6 months. The night before, we got an email. It was sent out to every kiosk on the West Coast right before close, saying that we had a mandatory call for every employee at 8 a.m. Come the morning, that call ended up being the call that they shut everything down. Right after I got the email, I called one of my buddies that lives over in Texas. I asked him, if he's seen anything. And he told me that he hadn't seen anything. So we started kind of thinking about it, and we started speculating that maybe Wireless Advocates was cutting off the West Coast, because nobody outside of the West Coast had gotten any emails stating that there was mandatory call coming the next morning. So we figured maybe this was it for the West Coast. A couple hours later, he actually ended up texting me, and he told me that he got an email saying that he was going to get a call, that the East Coast had a call in the morning. And then we confirmed that it was every time zone that was going to have the call. That was at 11 their time. So if you look at it that way, they got 8 hours, 9 hours of notice before they got a call that just stripped them from their jobs. This isn't the first time that this company has shown just a general disregard for its employees. So when I first started with this company, I worked in location 13. I was just a wireless sales expert. All I did was go in, I sold phones. After about 6 months of employment, they decided to bring in a new person. Keep in mind, the kiosk that I was at already had 3 full-time employees as well as a manager. So them bringing in another person was going to add a lot of hours to the kiosk. So I was told by my manager that I had 2 options. Either I can make a longer commute to a place that I had never worked before, be full-time, or stay at this location, and my other 3 employees that were there with, or the other 2 employees that were there with me, all 3 of us would have to go down to pretty much part-time. And so I ended up sacrificing going over to the other location that he mentioned. So after I had left that original location, I went to that new one, and I had a really good time over there. I met a lot of really good people. I worked there for about 9 months with no incident. Near the end of those 9 months, that original location that I had left, they kind of imploded in a way. Everybody from that location ended up quitting, and so I was asked to go over there and to take over that kiosk and to be the manager. It's hard for me because during that time I was diagnosed with cancer, and so I was trying to deal with that, and so I ended up accepting that position. After I accepted that position, I quickly realized that it wasn't exactly what I thought it was. They ended up turning it from the kiosk manager to kind of an acting kiosk manager position, where I still get paid exactly the same, but I had to do everything that a kiosk manager had to do. Again, I had some stuff outside of work that I had to deal with, so I ended up just accepting this, thinking that maybe it might further my career, might help me in the long run. After I accepted the position, I was the only employee that was at that location. So after I came back from this major surgery, I was left by myself to run this kiosk and to make sure that we were open all times. First month back, I worked 260 hours, and I kept getting told that I was going to get help, and I kept getting told I was going to get help getting help. And after 3 or 4 months of working 200 to 250 plus hours, I realized that help wasn't going to come unless I took it into my own hands. I ended up hiring somebody. I ended up hiring a few more people. I built that kiosk up. Then I went back to my other kiosk that I liked a lot more. When I got back to that other kiosk, I was offered the kiosk manager, and for a few months I was having a great time. I was doing really well. The company seemed to be doing really well. I got into the program to become a district manager. So instead of being like with my own kiosk, I would be in charge of like multiple different kiosks. So everything was going really well. I got offered an acting district manager spot, which was a higher salary. I ended up declining it, but things went well. Things went really well until they didn't. At the end, the past couple months of employment, we did start to notice a little bit of signs. Started to notice that we didn't have phones in stock. Started to notice that our ability to order phones kept getting turned off and then turned back on. I mean, the biggest thing for me is there is a lot of employees that lost their jobs. And I am in the fortunate position, as I had said, that I was kind of seeing some of the signs, but I was very much in the minority of seeing those signs. It's really hard for me because, like, in particular, I had one person who I was always with that is terrified that they now don't have a job. They have great experience, but they're not, it's not easy for somebody that has been in work for so long to just up and find a new job, especially when they're very close to retirement. Another thing that's very concerning, people lost their jobs, true. But also think of all of the members that came in and like ordered phones from us. We have, like, just sitting in our cage, we have 20 special orders of people that decided that they wanted to get iPhones, and they ordered it from us because we had a little bit better of a price. And they were willing to wait, but they wanted those phones for Christmas. Not only do they not have the ability to get those phones, Costco has to send those phones back to the vendors. Those people also will have to call Verizon, cancel those orders, and then they'll have, because those phones are all on back order, they'll have to order those phones again. Wireless Advocates not only laid off 2,000 plus people, they also ruined countless Christmases.
So my tenure at Wireless Advocates wasn't nearly as long as Mikey's was. I was introduced to the hiring process in mid-ish October when I was leaving my previous job there. I didn't start until the beginning of the month. So my time there, obviously much shorter than most other people's. I'm not saying I'm the newest hire there is, but I'm towards the top of new hires there. So I never really truly understood the shortages that my fellow coworkers, Mikey included, got to experience there. Life was normal with half a page of inventory, and I only heard rumors and almost fairy tales of numerous pages of phones to sell. So understanding the shortage on my side of things, I could definitely see it in hindsight. However, at the time, it just was normal life as is. Luckily, again, as Mikey pointed out earlier, I was blessed with the opportunity to see the signs, or at least have the signs shown to me that things weren't as
good as they seemed there. You know, just a couple weeks before we received the phone call that we were all terminated, we had our district manager come in and inform us kind of in passing that the Seattle kiosk, which was one of our top performing kiosks just on foot traffic alone, obviously high volume of people up there, that they had been given 3 days notice that the kiosk was done, which was kind of a shock and really solidified Mikey in his opinion that things were not going to go well. So the night before the meeting there, we received an email saying that it was all hands on deck meeting, no further information. It just was everybody needs to be in this call at 8 a.m. See you there. And so we jokingly talked about it being a termination meeting where we, come in and there's signs on the doors. Once we got closer and closer to the phone call, kind of reality started to set in that this might actually be that phone call. Obviously, I was not expecting it to be a 5-minute phone call where we're all done. I was expecting it to be through the end of the year. We would be systematically taken down. The least performing kiosks would probably be the first to go. And then by the end of the month, start of the new year, everybody would be out of a job. However, when the CEO came on to the call and informed us that he had bad news, it was like, oh, this might be it. The call, as we have mentioned before, was less than 10 minutes. The recording is over 10 minutes, but he kept it nice, quick, and concise, which to his credit, which I give very little, was at least nice that it didn't drag on for half an hour of telling us how sorry it was. It was very quick. Mikey and I went into our kiosk at 10 a.m., so roughly about 15-ish minutes after we would have started our shift, so 2 hours, barely 2 hours after we had been terminated. We arrived at Costco to kind of gather some of our belongings that we left at the kiosk, because obviously we weren't expecting to not have a job in the morning there. We got there and our entire kiosk was saran wrapped with big, thick black saran wrap, with signs posted all over the place saying that we were no longer in business and these are the numbers you can call if you need assistance. I did find it a little bit weird that when we walked in the door, the Costco employees that we knew were so apologetic and so sorry to see us go, almost as if they'd received an email or had a team meeting in the morning saying that we weren't going to be in any longer. But once we arrived at the kiosk and saw the state of things, we realized there was also a gentleman at the kiosk that we had never seen before. I won't claim to know everybody at the store, but Mikey does. And when we got there, Mikey looked at me and asked if I recognized him, and I certainly didn't. And he almost was damage control, because as he saw us, he approached, asked who we were, what we were doing. We just said we were here to collect our things. And the general manager, as well as 2 other high-up employees at the store, were brought over to watch us as we went through our things. And they informed us we weren't allowed to take any SIM cards or phones, and we weren't planning on doing so. However, we just wanted to collect some of our personal effects. As we've gotten further and further from the situation there, and one of the first things I even asked Mikey was what happens to the customers that we were working with. I had a lady who lives very close to me, just a few miles down the road, who her phone service is being shut off right after Christmas. After a week of waiting, it finally came in, and she even had gotten a notification that morning, Monday morning, that her phone was ready for pickup and that it was in, and Verizon was waiting to set it up. And I had the ultimate pleasure of texting her and saying, hey, the company doesn't exist, we can't sell you the phone. I would highly recommend you reach out to a corporate store in order to get the ball rolling and getting your service taken care of. As Mikey mentioned, numerous families are without phones for the holiday season, or without phones in general. I mean, obviously, ruining your holiday events and gift giving is one thing, but with the deactivation of cell phone towers going on nationwide for lower services per se, to see those people that are in desperate need of phones to just have basic communication with the outside world or with anybody in general, not having the ability to do so without jumping through hoops is very frustrating, and not at all Costco's fault that they can't sell these individuals their phones, but it's so frustrating to have this person ask me, so what am I supposed to do about my phone? It's in Gig Harbor, can I go get it? And it's like, no, you can't go get it. So it's incredibly frustrating on that front. I mean, obviously, thousands of people are without jobs, which is incredibly upsetting, even if it is just selling cell phones. These people relied on this job for a livelihood, and to not have that after a 7-minute phone call on a Monday morning is ridiculous. And the fact that people on the East Coast were probably in bed, sleeping, ready to get up and go to work the next morning, wake up, and if they're lucky, they check their email and they see they have a call in 5 minutes and they get on. And some people, I'm sure, were incredibly unlucky and didn't see that call, went to go to work and saw that everything was in disarray and that their kiosk borderline wasn't there anymore, having to scramble and call people, trying to figure out what's going on. But again, to circle back, to feel incredibly terrible for those customers and members who were relying on this company in order to have phones to function. Forget gifts, forget anything else, phones just to be able to, communicate. And now they don't have that ability to do so.